Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and welcome to your Enhancement Talent Review for Monday Night Raw, September 2nd, 2019. A show which featured a shocking heel turn of the lovable Bayley, the forever babyface Bayley, the female John Cena Bayley, that one. And we're going to go segment by segment throughout the show, but we're going to start right away talking about this whole thing and what went down with Bayley turning heel. So, it all started with an interview that Bayley did with Mean Charlie Caruso early in the night. And, Charlie sort of threw some shade at Bayley. Basically trying to say that Becky is the more important champion, and does she feel overshadowed? And, Bayley sort of ominously, I can't speak, but she said that we'll see who is in whose shadow at the end of the night, I think was essentially what she said. And so we get to the main event. We have the Champions versus Champions match. The Tag Champions versus the Raw and Women's Champion. Bayley and Becky versus Alexa and Nikki. And, it's a run-of-the-mill tag match for a while. For a minute I was wondering why this is main eventing and what the heck is going on. But, Bayley gets worked over for a while, eventually gets the hot tag to Becky. Becky runs wild, but as she is running wild, Sasha, who had been ringside during the match, runs in, hits Becky with a backstabber, grabs a chair, starts waffling away on Becky's back once again with the chair, and then Bayley comes in, she grabs the chair out of Sasha's hands, and they have this stare-off, like Bayley at first is like, "What are you doing? This isn't okay," but then you see the sick, sinister smile come out of Bayley, and then wham, right into Becky's back, beats down on Becky, and this was very rushed because the logo at the bottom was already at the bottom of the screen at 11 p.m., and, they don't have that overrun anymore. So, I could imagine this being a real disaster, and they just go off air before the heel turn actually happens. But in this case, they barely fit it in. Like, there was no time to really sulk in it. There was no, we couldn't see, what Bayley's reaction was after the fact, or what Sasha and Bayley did after, but we just saw Bayley whack Becky a few times with the chair, and that was it. That was how we went off air, leaving us in intrigue, I would say. So that's nice. I've talked about this before. I think that and it goes to the same thing that happens with a lot of baby faces turning heel, is that it's a short-term gain, because Bayley as a heel is right now probably the better direction for her, and she'll probably be more utilized in that way, and she's certainly being talked about more now than she has been since she cashed in Money in the Bank and won the Women's Championship. So that, in a vacuum, is good. And it gives Bayley something different to do. It gives her a better sense of direction. But the problem is that it shows a bigger problem within WWE's infrastructure of how they book, that it's one example of many. I can go back to Sami Zayn turning heel. I can go back to Daniel Bryan turning heel last year. And the thing with it is is that Bayley, coming from NXT, was exactly what the women's division could have used. Someone that the girls love, the kids love, and everyone just has that like universal love for Bayley, especially with the child audience. And you get that John Cena role, the way that the women and the kids loved John Cena, the women and the kids could have loved Bayley. And you get more into that and what actually happened. And it was just never, Bayley was never brought to that level. And she's had wins, she's had championship reigns, but she never felt unique. And after a while, like the reactions that Bayley used to get, like if you go back to when she first got called up from NXT, she was so over. Like everyone loved her. You had the hugger section signs, the chants, what was it in somewhere in Europe? I think it might have been like Ireland or something, where they wouldn't stop chanting that song at Bayley for 10 minutes straight. So there's things like that Bayley's work in NXT gave that to. But when you get to the main roster, it's a different story, because WWE does not know how to make a babyface a star anymore. And, you look back to the biggest boom period in wrestling in the Attitude Era. The catalyst behind it were two of the most successful faces of all time, and Stone Cold and The Rock. And that's what, people wanted to tune in for. And, you can go further than that. You can go to John Cena. I mean, I think that you could argue that Cena drove a lot of people away in the same way. He drove a lot of the hardcore audience away. But the child audience and other demographics, I'm sure he certainly helped a lot with just keeping that interest. And basically, like, what I'm trying to say, like, we look at the examples, like, Sami Zayn, I think, is someone that could have been a babyface for a long time, and when he was a babyface, he never won anything, and I don't even think he's won a championship. And, that moment of Sami Zayn, possibly winning a Royal Rumble, like a la Rey Mysterio, or winning a title at WrestleMania. That those moments that, can catapult a babyface, we just never saw that for Sami. We never saw it for Bayley. You can look back to Daniel Bryan turning heel last year, in that we never got the moment when Daniel Bryan came back, and after conquering injury and the concussions and being able to celebrate with him winning the WWE Championship. We got him winning the championship as a heel. And that's not by mistake. It's because Daniel Bryan was left so cold after his original return. They put him with Big Cass, and that didn't work. They absolutely flopped on his feud with The Miz, and, his momentum just died down. And so at the time, it was a brilliant move to turn him heel. It was a great decision to turn him heel. But it was a product of their own ineptitude of being able to book a Daniel Bryan return that would lead to him eventually recapturing the WWE Championship and having that moment like he had at WrestleMania in New Orleans, when he main evented the show, and Yeselmania. We never got the sequel to that, which I think would have possibly been just as satisfying, knowing that Bryan had overcame all the obstacles that he did. And so with Bayley, it never really got to that point. And so now we're at the short term. The short-term success is to turn Bayley heel. And I mean, I think this certainly leads, in some form or another. I don't know where they'll do it, if it'll be a Survivor Series thing. But I would think this has to lead to Charlotte being more of a little gray area of face and heel, that she ends up teaming with Becky against Sasha and Bayley. And, it's fascinating to think about where they could take the heel duo of Bayley and Sasha. It's something that we certainly haven't seen before. We've seen them team together as face. We've seen them fight against each other in NXT with Sasha being a heel. We've seen them in counseling segments with Dr. Shelby that were god-awful. But this is something that we haven't gotten a chance to see them do. And, if we get through Clash of Champions, and it's a long shot, but if Bayley walks out defeating Charlotte, and Sasha walks out defeating Becky, then all of a sudden you have this power duo of Sasha and Bayley ahead of each women's division. And I think, why stop there? I mean, they're doing the stuff with Seth Rollins and Braun Strowman right now, where they're the tag team champions and feuding over the Universal Championship. But what if you had Bayley and Sasha, each the women's champion for their respective brands, but then also recapturing the tag team championships and just running the division? You could do that. And I'm intrigued to see where they go, because there was another good promo that I'll get to later between Sasha and Becky. And I think it's very possible that we could see Bayley and Sasha just run both divisions and see what comes of it. I mean, if Sasha just comes back and does all this just to lose to Becky right away, then what was the point? Becky has been great, and she's done the best she possibly could, given what she has been given to work with. But it feels like it's starting to taper off. It's starting to lose its luster that it had. The man, and really a lot of things about Becky just seem to be fading away a bit as far as how over she was. So, and you can recapture that by possibly having her chase for the championship from Sasha, and have to earn her way back up to that spot. But for right now, I think the best move is to go all the way with this duo of Sasha and Bayley and seeing what they can do together. Because there's no way to know unless we give it a chance. So we'll see where that all goes. I'm interested. I think heel Bayley is something that I wasn't sure we'd ever see, given what the character is, and I'm not sure how they're gonna spin it. I'm not sure what exactly a heel Bayley entails. What is Bayley's next promo going to be like? Is it going to be that you people stopped caring about me, so screw you, I'm going to turn heel? Is there going to be a bigger motivation behind it? Is it going to be similar to the reason Sasha came back and attacked Natty and Becky, that she was that in the same way. Bayley was jealous of Becky's success and Charlotte's success. Could that be a possibility? What is the motivation behind it? And we'll have to wait and see. But I'm certainly intrigued by it. Hope to see some good things come of this. Even though I do think it's a product of a bigger problem. I think in the short term, this is a good move, and I'm very interested in seeing what goes on with the heel Bayley. But we are going to get into this thing segment by segment. Hope you guys are enjoying that insight on the Bayley heel turn. If you want to see more from me and this channel, be sure to subscribe, thumbs up, all that YouTube algorithm stuff, as we go segment by segment on all of the weekly WWE shows. And coming in October, we'll have AEW, we'll have NXT on USA in just a couple weeks. That when it moves to TV, I'll be reviewing weekly. And yeah, everything's going to be here on the channel. So, Raw started with Braun Strowman and Seth Rollins having their contract signing for their Universal Championship match, because it's not official until they get in the ring and sign that frickin' piece of paper. So, Michael Cole is moderating, quote-unquote, this contract signing. And Seth and Braun, they come out, they have a little back-and-forth promo. Seth Rollins points out that he beat the Beast to win this title, and that's something that Braun could never do. They go to sign the contract, but out comes AJ Styles to complain about Strowman getting a title shot because he looked at the championship. And AJ stressed on this is that all you have to do to get a championship opportunity here in WWE is you just gotta look at the championship. And Braun just says, "Me want title," and he gets a championship match. AJ had good points here for one, and it's good when the heel has good ammo there. And AJ was on point with this promo, especially when Cole was just like, "Oh, we're trying to conduct business here." And Styles just snaps back at him, "Shut up, Cole, I'll smack your teeth down your throats." We all say that to ourselves every time we hear, "It's boss time!" Or "the big dog." Or "oh my, what a moment." So, AJ Styles helped us out there. I was surprised Cole was able to continue commentating throughout the night with the savagery that was laid upon him. He wasn't ready for that. AJ says if the OC can't get what they want, then nobody is going to get what they want. He gets in the ring, he rips up the contract. Braun ends up flipping the table, the desk that the contract signing was taking place on. He just flips it right into AJ's face. And then a brawl breaks out, and it goes right to commercial during the brawl, so you knew that when we came back we were going to have a tag team match, playa. And that's what happened. We had Seth and Braun going against Gallows and Anderson. Rollins ends up pinning Anderson with a roll-up. AJ comes in for the beatdown. Braun takes everyone out, does his whole run around the ring spot where he shoulder tackles everyone, but accidentally takes out Seth as well. Rude and Ziggler come out to take out their Clash of Champions opponents in Seth and Braun, and it turns into a 5-on-2 beatdown where everyone gets in some finishers on Seth and Braun, and that was it. And then we come back from commercial. Cedric Alexander has an interview, which he ends up being attacked by the OC. And, I was thinking, this was just going to set up an ongoing thread of, the OC just attacking everyone. But it ended here. Cedric has his King of the Ring match, later on tonight against Baron Corbin, and so this set him up as the underdog even further, with Cesaro injuring him, or at least working a body part last week, and now the attack here by the OC further set that up. And I believe it will also set up Cedric Alexander versus AJ Styles for the United States Championship at Clash of Champions, which, sign me up for that. I'm all on board with that. Cedric against AJ could be the best opportunity for Alexander to really show what he's capable of on the main roster. After that, Ziggler and Rude beat Hawkins and Ryder. I mean, they already beat everyone in the tag team turmoil thing last week. So, just for good measure, we beat the former champions that no one ever took seriously. And there you go. We had Natalya versus Lacey Evans. For whatever reason, Lacey Evans comes out here for her entrance. And Natalya just comes in, shoves her to the ground, and walks to the ring, and has like this smirk on her face, like a complete dick. Like, Lacey Evans did not do anything to Natalya. Just for no reason, unprovoked, Natalya pushes this woman over and is smiling about it and laughing. What an asshole. Finish of this match is Lacey ends up throwing her sweat rag tissue thing in Natty's face, which it bounces, it just hits Natty in the face, falls to the ground. But for whatever reason, this distracts Natty enough to just stand there like, huh? Huh? You threw that at me. And then Lacey hits the women's right, the punch, to win the match. We had the aforementioned Sasha Banks and Becky promo. There were a lot of good back and forth lines here. It was worth watching. You know, Sasha talked about the some of the stuff she talked about last week with Becky having the bigger WrestleMania check, and it ended up being that Becky challenged Sasha to a match tonight. Sasha says she wants to do it where she can get more money, which is at the pay-per-view, and we get the match set up there. So good stuff. You know, there was still like remnants of the old Becky, like the whole feud with Ronda, like calling Sasha a weirdo and her blue hair and whatnot. Like, I could go without that. I don't think it's all that relevant, but everything else, material-wise, was really good. And unfortunately, I didn't write down enough quotes, but it was a good promo, and it's set up for a match at the pay-per-view, which we all knew we were going to get. So nothing wrong with that at all. After this, we got Cedric Alexander versus Baron Corbin in the King of the Ring quarterfinal? Yeah, that's what you'd call it. Cedric versus Corbin. What a kick-ass match. This was awesome. This was such a great match. And this showed what not only Cedric Alexander is capable of, which I feel like if you've watched enough Cedric, you know what Cedric can do. But it shows that when he wants to, and maybe not so much when he wants to, but when he's put in the position to have a good match and not put someone in a half Nelson crossface or a neck crank or whatever for 15 minutes, that Baron Corbin can be a damn good professional wrestler. Who would have thought that when you let your wrestlers wrestle, you get a good product? And, you know, like, the thing is, I got worried about this match because the WWE formula sometimes, especially in a case where Cedric had injuries going into the match, the formula sometimes would just be to have Corbin dominate the offense so that then Cedric can have a comeback. But instead, this match was back and forth. Cedric sold his ass off, but then still had brief flurries in between where you thought he could possibly pick up the win, but Baron would always be able to cut it down and cut it short and be able to go back to attacking a body part. And, just so many cool spots in this match. A lot of innovation by both guys. Like Cedric being it's not the Tree of Woe because he's hanging to the apron, to the outside of the ring. And Corbin just freaking picks him up, lifts him up by the head and slams his head into the turnbuckle. That was really innovative, something I haven't seen before. And, the finish, it ended up being a counter out of and the deep six in this match, it looked like Cedric was going to spin forever. I thought he was going to take flight. And finishes that Cedric ends up going for a tornado DDT, I believe, and Corbin turns that into an end of days and gets the pinfall win, which I'll get into not liking that in a minute because I would have rather Cedric won, but we'll count our losses at this being such an excellent match that I can look past that a little and just enjoy it. And everything about this match really just showed what the King of the Ring was about, and that's you just put two guys in the ring, you have a simple concept, and they fight for it. And this showed what Corbin can do, and what we will continue to see from Corbin, hopefully, throughout this King of the Ring tournament, if he's going to be in the damn thing. And yeah, just to go on that, I'm not into Corbin winning. When we did our predictions, our re-predictions, I had Cedric going to the finals and winning, because Clash of Champions is, of course, in Charlotte, North Carolina, Cedric's hometown, where he was trained and broke into the wrestling business. And so I thought it would have been a great moment for him to win King of the Ring in front of his hometown. But, nonetheless, I won't get too hung up on that. It's just everything has to be about heat. Corbin is only in this tournament so that he can be the heater, so for when the babyface eventually beats him. And whether that ends up being Ricochet or maybe Ali on the other side, if Corbin goes to the final, unless their plan really is to make King Corbin, which I can't possibly see, but it's WWE, so you never know. But, nonetheless, this was a great match, and I won't take anything away from that. But the fact that we're not getting Cedric versus Ricochet next week is a shame. We had another Viking Raiders squash match. They did it a bit differently this time, as they did the thing where they have the jobbers have an interview before the match. And in this case, they had the jobbers play heels. And, they were in Baltimore. They called them Baltimoreans and said they drove in from Pittsburgh. My hometown, of course. I'll be going to the AEW show in Pittsburgh in October 23rd, I believe. That's going to be fun. As well as doing the Steelers Monday Night Football game that same week. So, going to be a fun time in October. But, yeah. They made the jobbers heels. And I'm going to assume that the thought behind it was that because nobody cares about these Viking Raiders squash matches, they figured, well, if we make the jobbers get heat, then the crowd will pop when the Viking Raiders beat the hell out of them. And, that would be cool if, they did that 5 months ago, when this started, after the Viking Raiders debuted the Raw after WrestleMania. And here we are in September! 5 months! The Viking Raiders, such a talented duo, are still doing squash matches. After last week, and I was all over telling you how much the tag team turmoil match sucked for the main reason of the Gallows and Anderson Viking Raiders double disqualification. But there were a certain amount of people that were saying, it could be good if it leads to a Viking Raiders versus Gallows and Anderson non-title feud. Did you really think that was going to happen? Come on. This is WWE we're talking about. You knew they weren't going to follow up on that. You knew it. You played yourself for even thinking that they might care enough about the tag team division to even do a feud that does not revolve around the titles. That's all they do. That's all they have time to invest in. And it's not just the tag division. They do it with the women's division too. If it's not for a title, it doesn't matter. And they don't put any time into it. So, if you actually thought we were going to get an OC and Viking Raiders feud, I'm sorry, you played yourself for thinking that. We're right back to square one, right where we started with the Viking Raiders, right with the Viking Experience debut. And when the hell does it stop? When are you going to? At some point, you have to shit or get off the pot. If you're gonna push these guys, fucking push them. If you're not, then fucking send them back to NXT and let them be used the way they were being used there. We have the freaking Authors of Pain. I don't know how long both of them have been healthy, but it's at least been a few months. We have them collecting dust. Throw them and the Viking Raiders in a match out of nowhere. And we don't want to beat one of them. Well, fuck that. They're not even being used. What are they going to lose by being beat? They'll be on TV. Do the fucking Street Profits versus the Viking Raiders. They're here every week being hype men. Have them get in the ring. Do something with these guys because it's a freaking waste of time. It just doesn't even make sense what they are doing here. I'm completely over it. Either do something with them or send them back to NXT. They're going to USA. They could use some more tag teams there. We had a Sasha Banks interview with Sarah Schreiber, which did not really end up being much of an interview. Sarah asks Sasha, because her and Bayley are still friends, if she will be rooting for Bayley tonight. So Sasha gets in this woman's face and yells directly at her to get the hell out of my face. Sarah cowers away in fear. She kind of bumped into a wall. She was so scared. So many times, the interviewers aren't allowed to show any personality, and they just have that deadpan look, and they can't do anything but awkwardly smile. So, if they would have done something like that here, then that would have been terrible. But the fact they had her cower away in fear, that was good. I'd like to see them take it a step further. Have Sasha beat the hell out of one of these interviewers. I think it was Brock Lesnar on Josh Matthews that one time when, Brock, the first little bit after he came back, where Brock got upset at something that Matthews said, and Matthews just says as Brock is walking away, I was just trying to do my job. And Brock comes in and just beats the hell out of him, tosses him around the wall, and just chokes him. Have Sasha get physical with one of these girls and just beat the hell out of her. That would be 100 times better than saying, "Hey, Natalya, your dad's in hell." Just saying. We had Joe versus Ricochet in the King of the Ring tournament. This match was disappointing for a multitude of reasons, and the first of which is that they just won't let Ricochet be Ricochet. And, it just comes down to the WWE style, and I'm sure people are telling him, slow it down, kid. I'm sure Michael Hayes is producing these matches, and you got to slow it down. You got to make the moves count, doot. But Ricochet has turned into the small guy that gets worked over for 80% of the match, and then gets his comeback and shows a brief flurry of what he's actually capable of, instead of just being able to do that throughout the match. And I'm sure him and Joe can do better than this. But what was disappointing beyond that is the goofiest shit they could have possibly done. So Ricochet is on the top rope. He's going to go for a 630, but Joe ends up meeting him at the top rope. It ends up being that Joe gets Ricochet in the coquina clutch on the top rope. And so Ricochet, in a move of desperation, catapults himself and Joe off the turnbuckle. They both collapse and hit the deck. But both of them, with their shoulders down, are technically pinning each other. And so the ref comes in. He hits the 1, 2, 3, but then he's like, "Oh, well, it looks like they were both being covered." And then he goes to ringside, and he goes to the timekeeper's area, and this is John Cone. And he asks for a headset, and he starts communicating with someone in the back, I guess. Like it's fucking like Walt Anderson in the NFL is just communicating with the New York headquarters to talk about what he should call on this challenge replay. This was so freaking goofy. And so, in the end, after John Cone talks to this person, and I'm not sure if it was a management person we're supposed to believe that he was talking to, or if it was another official. I don't know if they have a senior official or a head of officiating like the NFL does or anything. But nonetheless, whoever he was talking to, he gets off the headset, and he just walks away. And Ricochet comes in, and he's like, "Hey, what's going on? Who won?" And so John Cone just says, "We'll make a decision later." And he walks away. He walks up the ramp and leaves. And so, of course, Ricochet and Joe just end up fighting each other in the ring, and Ricochet gets the better end. But what the hell? And for one, they replayed this thing over and over, and commentary is like, "Oh, well, were their shoulders both down? Oh, I can't tell. Can we get another angle of that?" It was pretty fucking obvious that both of their shoulders were down. And the fact that John Cone had to go and talk to someone else to get their opinion on it, when he can clearly fucking see, as he's still looking after the 3 count, that neither of these guys have even moved. It's clear that they're both pinning each other. So why did you have to jump through all these hoops to get to this point, and then still have to leave and make a decision later? Why can't it be as simple as, okay, well, there was no winner, this is a single elimination tournament, we gotta restart the match, it'll continue from here, and we'll get a clean, decisive winner. Instead, it turns into, later, Corbin is, Graves, I should say, goes backstage and he interviews John Cone to get the final decision. And Baron Corbin comes in, he gloats and says, oh, well, both of them lost, so I'll get a bye and I'll advance into the final round. And then John Cone, the balls on this man, says, well, actually, we talked to management, and we're going to have both guys advance, and it's going to be a triple threat match this week. Ha ha! The never-ending feud of Baron Corbin and John Cone continues. I can't wait until their WrestleMania match. That's going to be really fun. But, what the hell, man? Why? Why did we jump through all of these hoops? And I can guarantee you the reason for them doing this is that whoever they're going to put into the final round, be it Ricochet or Baron Corbin, whichever one of the two they're going to do, they wanted to put Samoa Joe in that match so he could take the pin and whichever one of the two advances to the finals, whether it's Corbin or Ricochet. And it's just so freaking dumb. If you didn't want... You could have arranged the bracket differently if you really didn't want these guys to face each other. But, now it's like, oops, well, we got no choice now. We got to do something. Just so much extra shit on such a basic concept. A concept that is not exclusive to wrestling. A concept of a tournament can go back a long way. But I guess once we get to March and we have the college basketball March Madness, when one of the games, when Texas and UCLA go to have a tie game after two halves, I guess instead of doing overtime, we're just going to advance both teams to the next round, and then it'll be Texas versus UCLA versus Wichita State in a triple threat basketball game. It's so freaking simple. Like, it's a tournament, a single elimination tournament. How much simpler can it get? And you have to overcomplicate this. Why? Why? One thing that was not overcomplicated was the Firefly Funhouse is back. Finally, I have missed the Firefly Funhouse. I was so happy when I saw that this was going to be on this show, and I'm glad that they are going to continue using both sides of the Bray Wyatt character. You have the Firefly Funhouse Bray to do the promo work and set up all the angles and whatnot, and then you have the Fiend Bray to destroy and eviscerate everyone, as Kane might say. As long as they don't have Bray Wyatt say eviscerate, then this will be a good start. So in the Funhouse, we have the evil Vince puppet come in, and he's saying they addressed the leak of the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, where Bray Wyatt is set to be challenging the winner of the Braun Strowman and Seth Rollins match for the Universal title. Sorry. Oh my god. Sorry about that. Excuse me. Anyway, they address that, and they have the Vince puppet come in, and he says, how dare you challenge Seth or Braun to a title match? They're important, and we can't have anything bad happen to them. And then Bray just says, but I've been making all of these. And he pulls out a wad of cash. And Vince, the production of this is so hilarious to me, because Vince gets like the dollar signs in his eyes, and then Bray feeds him a dollar bill, and Vince eats it. and then he is satisfied and leaves Bray alone. So Bray goes on saying that Seth and Braun hurt him deeply in a past life, going back to the Wyatt family. You know, Braun was a member of the Wyatt family. Seth was a member of the Shield that combated with the Wyatt family, so there's some backstory in there. And Bray says he's moved past it and uses his friends in the Funhouse to cope, and the Fiend to inflict punishment. And it goes off with Bray with all the dolls, but Rambling Rabbit just has a sign that says help. So, you know, there's still some intrigue there about what the Funhouse actually is and what Rambling Rabbit is referring to. But whether that ends up being ever paid off on, or whether it ends up being the Sister Abigail of this character, where we never actually get a conclusion, time will tell. Time will tell. Next, we had a Rey Mysterio interview. There was nothing new that came out of this interview, and really nothing of note. Rey just recapped what happened a couple weeks ago and says that Dominic convinced him not to retire. And yeah, that was it. Last week, they advertised that this week we would see a Rey Mysterio return. Like the 5th time they've done a Rey Mysterio returns. And this is what they did. He didn't have a match or anything. Just a Charlie Caruso interview. Miz defeats Cesaro. It was a fine match. Cesaro's new tactic is just to immediately start uppercutting people. Which, hey, all for. This man flew back from the NXT UK show, which was just 2 days ago, to come back here and be beaten by The Miz on Raw. I don't know why that couldn't have been used for anyone else, but, you know, props to Cesaro for being the real working man. Yeah, I mean, I can't even remember the last time Miz won something, so I guess this was just to build Miz into the Intercontinental title match with Nakamura, but whatever. And then after that, we got the Alexa and Nikki Cross versus Bayley and Sasha Banks match, which I already talked about. So, it appears that we are all out of stuff to talk about for this show. Overall, Raw was it was a solid show. It ended with a big cliffhanger angle with Bayley turning heel, which will have intrigue going into SmackDown tomorrow. It'll have intrigue for the Bayley and Sasha going forward. There was a lot of good stuff. There was some baffling stuff, and mostly just the treatment of the Ricochet and Samoa Joe match and how stupid that was. The Viking Raider stuff, which infuriates me to no end. But other than that, Corbin versus Alexander was awesome. And, you know, if we have a Raw where there's a kick-ass match, which the Corbin and Cedric match was, and a killer angle at the end, and an unexpected twist at the end, with Bayley turning heel, then, you know, you can't say it was a bad show. It was very, very good, I thought, from what we are accustomed to. So, good stuff. I'll be back here for SmackDown tomorrow night. And we'll be back on the podcast version with Chris on Thursday. I'm sure we'll get his take on All Out and kind of go through that again. And I'm sure we'll talk about Bayley and some other things on that show. Whatever news happens to come out in the next 2 days, we'll be there to discuss that on Thursday. And, yeah, then we'll do it all again the next week, and the week after that, and the week after that. But, until next time, stay tuned to the channel, subscribe, thumbs up, and all the cool YouTube stuff. And, peace.